Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to podcast 52 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet me at OBKiev or tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media /the Odds Breakers. Once in a while, there's a free play anyways on social media, so always good to check that out. And we're still doing our YouTube weekly picks as well. This episode is being sponsored by mybookie.ag. For a 100% sign up bonus, please visit MyBookie. Use the promo code TheOddsBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a premium member for $17.99 a month. You can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber. Get the podcast a little bit early. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, we have a fantastic show for you today. Kyle Hunter from Hunter Sports Picks comes on, answers a bunch of questions, and talks college football for about an hour. So we have some fantastic content and some fantastic games to go over. Very excited about that. But I have some good news and I have some bad news. The bad news is we are only doing college football on this podcast because Kyle and I took so long. And so it's just going to be mostly college focused along with sharp line movement at the very end. But the good news is that tomorrow we are doing a show with a special guest for NFL Week 4. So you're going to get 3 shows this week rather than 2. All right. Well, before we get Kyle Hunter on, we talk about some games, and I obviously give some picks, and so does he. But I first want to give you one play before he comes on a game that I like that we didn't get to discuss. So we're going to look at UNLV versus Wyoming. Wyoming is laying -9, over under is 48. So what do you get when you get 2 teams that are terrible at throwing the ball, but they're also terrible at pass defense, but they're really good at running the ball, but they're also extremely good at run defense? Well, I'll tell you what you get. You get unders. That's exactly right. And I am giving this game out under 48. Wyoming, 0 passing game. They run the ball a ton, right? But their rushing defense right now only allows 2.3 yards per carry, which is top 13 in all of FBS, 130 teams in football. UNLV definitely can't pass the ball either, and they have a terrible passing defense, but they can run the ball pretty good. They're getting about 5.9 yards per carry. Of course, some of that skewed because they played some very easy teams, but it's just too bad that they're facing one of the best rush defenses in the Mountain West, and pretty good in all of football there. So what I really like about this play is even if these teams try to pass the ball at the end, the weather report is what's knocking on the door here, because it's calling for moderate rain showers, double-digit wind speeds, and some serious wind gusts. Because of all this, I took the total at 51, but I like this down all the way to 45. Take the under and UNLV versus Wyoming.
Show me the money!
All right, without further ado, let's get Kyle Hunter on from HunterSportsPicks.com. Now I'm very excited to welcome back an all-star professional handicapper, with the records to prove it. You know him as Kyle Hunter. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks and check out his plays at huntersportspicks.com. Kyle, what an interesting football season already. How's it been treating you?
It's been a good football season, especially college football for me so far this year. 20-11 and college football plays. That doesn't count my free plays, which have also done really well. So premium plays have done well. Totals have done especially well. That's what I'm usually the best at, is totals. The sides have done okay as well. I feel like I've seen things pretty well so far this year. I do know that things change a little bit this time of the year. You have to handicap a little bit differently. So, as we go into conference season and as the lines get a little bit tighter on some of these games, it's going to change how things are, but I love this time of the year. College football is great.
Well, fantastic, man. I'm having a good year too. It's been a great start. It always feels good when you're hitting the premium plays because you're usually putting a little bit more on them. So
right.
Was happy about that. I'm 31-24. Some of that 24 was some buybacks, just trying to middle a few things. I hit one last week, but I probably lost more than I have. But sometimes it's a good opportunity to do that and just to hedge what you're going to lose. But, it's been great. And I see, people like you are successful. It's so great to have you back on the show. And what you said there really leads me into some great questions for you when you said time of the year. And let's get right into the first question I have. Are there any trends or situations that you like to look at in the start of conference play? Now, I know some teams have already had a conference game or whatever, but the way we always looked at it was week 4.
Right.
Is conference started. It just started last week. Week 5 coming up. What do you look for this time of year?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, like you said, some of them throw out those conference games in week 1. And as I was looking through some of the database and running some queries to see, what does it mean with conference games early in the season, the week 1 games don't go the same way the week 5, 6, 7 games do at the beginning of conference play. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Once you've played a few games here against non-conference opponents, a lot of these teams have played teams that aren't very good. At least a couple of their games have been against teams that are FCS or at least poor teams from smaller conferences. We get to games 5 and 6 of the season, and that's how I looked at this angle. So you're talking it's the team's 5th or 6th game of the regular season. It's a conference game. They're the underdog, and they're on the road. There are some really good angles for road underdogs here in games 5 and 6 of the season. If you filter it out by 50% of the spread bets are lower, 366 and 270, 57.5% ATS. Mm-hmm. I'll go ahead and throw out one more here right after that's very similar. If you add one more filter to this one, the team has also covered 50% or less of their spread bets so far this year. The angle goes all the way up to 270 and 178, so that's 60.5%. This to me is really simple. I think it's a spot where home field advantage is overvalued usually. That's one, and especially here early in the season for conference games, nobody's going to be hanging it up. None of these teams that are underdogs are going to say, well, we don't care about this game. Later in the season, that will happen. That's not going to happen now. These teams are invested. Maybe they haven't played quite up to potential so far this year, but, this is a good spot to maybe buy low on a team like this. I have a couple more here that I'll throw out to you here real quick. If you just take the road underdog in game 5 and 6 in a conference game, you're at 55.5% ATS since 2005. And listen, 55.5% ATS is very good in a large sample size like that. This. That a lot of people say, 70%, I'll do 65, 70%. They're not going to do that. If you hit 55.5% in a large sample size over 2005 to 2019, that's really good. So, just taking the road underdog by itself has been very, very profitable.
What amazes me, Kyle, is that every single person on Twitter somehow is above 60% lifetime.
It is amazing.
These sports books must be getting absolutely killed on me.
Right. How do they have those big buildings?
I don't know, man. They must be all just completely going bankrupt. No, great stuff there. And, I think the road underdogs this early as well, these teams are more desperate and, they know they're underdogs. We all know the spreads now. They're on pretty much every single app that you look at. It's every sports app. And these teams are desperate. They know that they can't lose conference games. They're going to put a little extra effort in there. So I wonder if that applies a little bit from a motivational spot. Just like you said, I don't know why it is, but 55% is a huge winning percentage when it comes to the sports better. So very good stuff there, man.
Yeah, I've got one more angle here for you that's similar, but I just want to I think this is the best angle of them all. So you've got a road dog in game 5 or 6, conference game. Their ATS cover rate's 50% or lower so far this year, and they also had 6 wins or more last year. So to me, this is a good team that's kind of undervalued this year because they've had a slow start. So you're taking a team that we already saw last year they were a good team, or at least a decent team. You don't want to take that team that was, 1-11 or something like that and assume that they're just going to be a lot better. This is a team that has already proven that, with at least some of the same players and usually the same coach, that they've been good. So now you go into the next season, and what happens? Well, they come out of the gate slowly. So you get an ATS cover rate of 50% or lower, and they had 6 wins or more last season. 153 and 95 ATS. That's 61.7%. So I think that's a really good angle. I mean, I think that's one that listeners should really pay attention to. Look for those teams that haven't covered the number too well so far this year, but you think they were going to be a good team. If you did your preseason work, and maybe they haven't covered big numbers. Maybe they're just kind of keeping it classy and not running up the score. Maybe they just, have had integrated some new pieces into their offense or defense, and they haven't quite clicked on all cylinders yet. But now you get to conference season, and this game means more to them, and they have that talent. I think that could be a really good angle.
Yeah, buy low, sell high. Some of these teams know they're going into games and they're going to get beat. They have a very tough schedule. Miami of Ohio is one that popped in my mind the way you talked about. They weren't exactly covering spreads. Now that they're going to go into the MAC conference, they might have some extra motivation to say, okay, guys, it's finally time to get up here. We're not playing Ohio State, right? So that's a very good possibility of why that is. They were a decent team last year, maybe, and that's just the first one I thought of, but that makes total sense to me. Some of them just like, okay, this is the non-conference. This is not going to matter. Our goal is to come here and win the conference. So fantastic stuff. We'll look for some dogs, just like you said there. Especially when they are not good ATS in their non-conference. That's some great advice there. Well, let's go right into something that you specialize a little bit more in, and everyone knows you as a totals type guy. The question that I have here is, how do you normalize teams' pace of play when some of them were involved in blowouts the first 4 or 5 weeks, and they could have been the team blowing out the little team, or they might have been the little team that maybe played slower fast this year, their pace looks way off. How do you normalize that?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, and this is probably my favorite question, just because it is a totals question, and that's what I really like the most. I think that the answer here kind of is an answer that applies to both college football and college basketball. Because if you start thinking about, think about it, we're not that far away from college basketball. This is a busy time of the year. To be honest with you, there's part of me that's really excited about that, and there's part of me that's like, man, I'm busy already. I don't know if we need to throw in every other sport, but here it's coming. So we've got college football and college basketball. To me, when I'm weighting the tempo of recent games, I always weight it more heavily in my formula than the ones from earlier in the season. To me, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, you've got a team that you can't really tell the true tempo of that team because they've let off the gas. If they were classy, this happens in college basketball as well. If you're winning 90-50 with 3 or 4 minutes left, you would hope you'd use the whole shot clock,
Exactly.
And same thing in college football. You would hope you'd run the football, run the play clock down, not try to score. Now, some people don't do that, and it still frustrates me. But, in general, that's going to happen more often than it doesn't. And as you said, actually, you can get it the other way around too. Maybe a bad team wants to play slow because, if you're in a matchup where the other team's better than you, then you want to reduce the amount of possessions in that game. So maybe you play a little bit slower earlier on, and then you want to speed up and play normal because now you're playing against teams that are similar to you. So I think the way I would answer this question is, this is why you want to have some recency bias when it comes to totals handicapping. We think of recency bias as a negative thing, especially from an ATS standpoint. You go from week 1 to week 2 in the NFL, or week 1 to week 2, or 2 to 3 in college football. You can see some big overreactions. At the same time, I think that there are some people who don't react enough to tempo changes when it comes to totals. So what I try to do is get ahead of the market in recent pace changes. Some teams, they want to speed up or slow down their pace of play, especially in smaller conferences. This is a great area to try to find some under the radar totals value. So you go back and you say, okay, this team has played 7 games so far this year, but in week 1 and 2, they were using this many seconds between plays. If you're talking about college football, you say they were using 32 seconds between plays, and now in only conference action, they're using 26 or 27 seconds per play. You better be weighting your formula as far as what kind of totals number you're going to come up with a lot more toward that recent number, because I don't think that non-conference number means that much in a situation like that. So I guess there's not a perfect way to answer this with saying, here's the perfect scientific way to just answer this question. But I do think that this is the time of the year where you want to start paying attention to who did they play? Why did they play slower? Why did they play faster? Some teams are going to be playing faster too because they're so far behind that they just want to snap it constantly. And now they're playing against teams that are more like them and they don't play as fast. So you have to try to, if you have a formula, the formula is not going to tell you everything. To me, I come up with a raw number as far as totals, and then I go in and I look, what's the weather going to be like? You can look at long range forecasts, things like that. Actually, I'm kind of giving a segue to our next question without really trying to here, but you go in and you see something like that. You see, what kind of team are they playing against? Are they going to want to run the football and just use the clock, or what are they going to do? And I'm not saying that there's a perfect way to do that, but, I'll come up with a raw number and then I'll adjust it slightly based on either what the marketplace did the week before, knowing that, some people want to play overs or unders with a certain team and they're just going to get steamed that way every single week. Or I see a change in that team style of play to where, I want to adjust that a little bit. So even though that, the total formula math person would tell you that you really shouldn't do something like that, it's something that I've been successful doing myself, is to kind of move the number a little bit after that in the direction that I think it should go. And so I think the best way to answer this question is, teams who are involved in blowouts in the early season, kind of take those with a grain of salt. Those games, as far as tempo, when it comes to totals, they don't mean too much to me. So,
exactly.
You look at the games that they have had close games and you see how they played and you weight that a lot more heavily.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and you also look at what they did the year before, if they were just all blowouts. Like, for example, I'm looking at TCU. They have 80 plays, 80 possessions, right? And they averaged 7 the year before. And you try to look at what the hell happened, And then you look at they played Arkansas Pine Bluff. Well, they won 39-7. That shouldn't have affected it. But then you look at Purdue, and you look into the box score of that game, and then you see that TCU had 40 minutes and 33 seconds of possession to 19 minutes and 27 seconds. So basically they were just pounding the ball the whole second half, being up, and had that time, but they weren't necessarily playing fast. They just outpossessed the hell out of Purdue that game. And then you look at their next game against SMU. We know SMU is a fast-paced game. They're involved in a shootout towards the end of it. So there might be some overreaction to their total just based upon the situations they're in. in. So I always look at try to weight more of last year a little bit when I'm coming up with my totals play, but there's just so many different ways of spinning it. And I like what you do. You kind of come up with, what you think it should be. Then you look at the situation, and then possibly see if, they're playing another fast or slow team, because it multiplies if they're playing faster. Great answer. Well, that brings us into our next question here. And what is it's about wind speed here, and this factors in to betting totals as well. What's the speed that really starts to affect a passing game?
So this is one I've looked at really closely. Weather unders have been really good to me over the years. This is something that I've made good money on in the past 10 or 12 years. And I will tell you, I think this is harder to do than it was 10 years ago, because more people know about this. More people are betting this earlier in the week. It's kind of hard to know when should you trust that forecast too, because, if you're betting a weather under on Tuesday for a game on Saturday, they could be wrong about what the weather is going to be. So you have to be careful with something like that. But what I would say is, the system's information that I've looked at would say you start around 10, 11, 12 miles per hour sustained wind. Now, that seems like not that much. It makes a small effect, and, can make you just a little bit off on your deep passes, can make you miss a field goal that was going to be close. I like to look for 15 miles per hour or so. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I like to look for are the extreme gusts. You can have some of these games where October, November, you see, in the Midwest or Northeast, places like that, there's going to be a lot of games where the weather's changing. There's a cold front that goes through, and you're going to see a weather forecast that says 14 miles per hour winds with gusts to 25 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour. Those gusts can really make a big difference. And obviously it's unpredictable exactly when those will come. But if you see something that says sustained winds of 10 or 12 miles per hour, I don't think it's a huge factor. But if it says, 12 miles per hour wind with gusts to 25 or 30, that means a lot more to me. So, I think that around 15 sustained is where I like to look for. And then when you get the gusts, you can go a little bit lower than that, because that can be pretty helpful as well. And I will say also that in the next month, 2 months here, we're going to see a lot more of these weather games than we have so far this year. I've actually kind of, lamented the fact that we haven't really had too many chances to play ones like this so far this year. There hasn't really been, massive rainstorms, tropical rainstorms that come right at the time a game's going on. So, and the ones that they have, there's been some pretty significant moves early in the week. I think you've hit on a couple of those here in the last couple of weeks, haven't you? With the Kansas game was one of them.
Yeah, the Kansas game in West Virginia was our largest play last week. We went under, and it was dropped from 54.5 to 49.5. That was one actually middle. That
was your middle, yeah.
So okay. that was good, and they were both in letdown spots too. They both won their previous games, and West Virginia was a new team this year. Kansas had a new coach, and it's Kansas, right? They won a road Power 5 team, which was almost immaculate for them. Right. But they actually did score more points than I thought they did. If I looked at, I can't remember the box score, but there was poor defenses there too, and I think that was part of the reason I was a little bit, wanting to buy back on that. But it turned out, and that's why it's important to get the early lines. I tell people, try to get them as early as you can, and I think that the whole game is changing a little bit when it comes to this.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a big race to get the lines out first, because the sports books are going to know that that's what people want. The demand's going to go up higher, especially with apps. It's not like you're going to Vegas for the weekend and you have to wait to put your plays in. You can,
right.
You can bet wherever on your phone, and that's going to be the trend coming up here. So I think it's very important to be that for person, especially when you can predict line value. And I think some of that stuff is going to come into fruition here. Well, let's get into a few games here, Kyle, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, my man. Well, you knew I was going to bring this one up after what my Badgers did to poor Michigan. Rutgers is playing Michigan now. Michigan is laying 27.5 points. Over under is 48. I know you don't have to spend too much time on this one. Do you have any initial thoughts about this game?
Well, I mean, kind of like I told you, I even sent you a message about this one. Like, I was really surprised this was on the list. And then I kind of thought about it, the game that Michigan just had last week. I was thinking maybe that's why you want to talk about this game. But, I will say, I I'm certainly no Michigan fan myself, being a Buckeyes guy. This is a good bounce back spot for Michigan. This really should be a get right spot for them. If they can't put up a big number here, I'd be pretty worried about their offense. If you look at this, you got 65% of the bets on Michigan, 83% of the money on Michigan. So much for their explosive offense. That hasn't come to fruition at all. 5 plays of 30 yards or more so far this year. That's 92nd in the country, and that's tied with Rutgers. If you're tied with Rutgers in explosive plays, you're not doing too well. So Rutgers -6 in turnover margin, Michigan -4 in turnover margin. Michigan scored on only 9 of 13 trips in the red zone. You would expect that to improve. I could only play Michigan here if I had to bet this game. I'm not excited about this game in any way. So, this is one that I'd rather kind of gloss over and just say, Michigan really has to turn it around. And I will say that I think that some of the look-ahead lines that I'm seeing now for Michigan's games the rest of the season might be a little bit too negative on them. I saw a +10.5 on Michigan hosting Ohio State. I think that's probably too much right now. Let's see Ohio State through some of the better teams that they're going to play. Certainly, Ohio State looks better than Michigan right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Michigan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was starting to say that Michigan has more talent than what they have shown thus far, and you would kind of think that Harbaugh would help turn them around. I don't know. I mean, I am losing a little bit of confidence in him, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I really liked Harbaugh. I mean, I liked him at Stanford. I liked him on the Niners. I thought he was a completely underrated coach. I thought he was just going to make a huge splash at Michigan. I had so much respect for him. He had 2 weeks to prepare this team, and this team was not together. They were going their separate directions when they were blocking. They were doing their separate thing on the defensive line. They weren't staying in their own gaps. They were just kind of all over the place, kind of like trying to manage a bunch of inmates that don't like you. Or it was just weird to me because you just saw them, biting on plays they shouldn't be biting on. Wisconsin just played right into them, and they just stuffed them, and they won every facet of the game. And you wonder what the heck's going on there. I don't think their offensive line is as good as I thought it was, and I'm not sure if they have that big of a pass rush either. I think the defense is a little bit better than the offensive line right now, but they have some problems there. The reason I brought this game up mostly is because I wanted to talk a little bit about Michigan and their spot. If Harbaugh is anything of a coach, he's telling this team that this is a quality win. You still control your own destiny. You can run the Big Ten, get revenge against Wisconsin or whoever in the Big Ten championship game and have a very good shot at making the playoffs. This should be I would try to pitch it more of a wake-up call for my guys than anything else. And, knowing Harbaugh, I still have to think that he can do that. And when you play a team like Rutgers, this is where the team is pissed off. Rutgers can't even score a point, and Michigan wins 35-3. Now I have this in my power ratings at 25.5. This is a perfect, buy low spot for Michigan, but it's not where I want it to be yet. I was hoping this overreaction was going to be at 23, but the books made a statement and put it right at 27, and it's been kind of hovering around there. I'm going to wait on this one. If it obviously goes above 28, it's definitely not a play for me. But if it gets down to 27, 26, 25, I'm going to start thinking a little bit about it and it might be a small play just to kind of prove a point here. We have to remember, Michigan still has 4 and 5 star guys there. You can see that they have speed. Those receivers are big guys, Black and Peoples-Jones. There's some big boys on there. They just got to gel together more. And I think if this team fails, it's going to be on the hands of the offensive line and the quarterback. Shea Patterson didn't do any favors for them throwing some of those picks. So we'll see what happens to Michigan. But yeah, sorry to bring that one up, Kyle. Just kind of a little bit of a learning experience, I thought, for our listeners right there, my man. Well, let's get into a game that's a little bit more interesting here. Wake Forest versus Boston College. Boston College is 7-point dogs. The over-under is 68.5. Would you like to start on this one?
Yeah, I got to tell you, there's a couple things that I thought I wanted to bet in this game, and I was kind of priced out of both of them. So I wanted to bet Wake Forest here, and I wanted to bet the over here. This is a game where I wasn't able to be looking at the lines on Sunday this week. -3, -4 openers at some of the different books. I would have taken Wake Forest at -3. I would have taken Wake Forest at -4. -7, very different thing. I will say that I'm low on Boston College. I think that Boston College has been very fortunate so far this year. Everything in their profile screams regression. +9 turnover margin, -0.22 yards per play. That's 90th in the country. I mean, we know that the one game they lost was really ugly. So, I mean, to me, this Boston College team is not very good. I think that I feel like I know what Boston College is. I think they're overvalued right now. The marketplace was quick to realize that too, though. And you got Wake Forest on the other side. Newman's done a really good job at quarterback. I've been very impressed with him. I think Clawson's a very good coach. I give Wake Forest the coaching edge in this game. I like that both teams play so fast. Boston College 4th in tempo, Wake Forest 15th in the country. So I think we're going to see a ton of possessions. This total just keeps creeping on up. I was kind of hoping it would drop back down. I might have a chance to play the over. I can't take it at this high of a number. I will tell you, the line move here has really been aggressive both on the over and on Wake Forest, to where I feel like, I'm going to end up having nothing on this game.
I know, man. I was looking at this game and I had it circled too, and I think I agree with you about the pricing. I like Wake Forest a lot. And the first thing I wrote in my bullet points is the line seems inflated. Jamie Newman's looks great. He's got a 71% completion rate. He's got huge receivers. Sage Surratt is a 6'3". Scotty Washington is 6'5". These guys tower over people, right? But they're playing at Alumni Stadium. That's a pretty good home field advantage, and it's kind of a later game too, a night game, I believe. So those night games, there's an extra point or two involved, I think, to my handicapping anyway, when it comes to playing those road teams. It's just at night everyone's all liquored up. It's dark. You just kind of feel intimidated. It's just more of an intimidation factor. The crowd's louder, right? So I have this game at Boston College +3.5. I don't have it at +7. Based on my power ratings, I try to figure out why. Am I too high on Boston College? Maybe I am. Maybe I am. I think you were right about a lot of that stuff, but how off am I? I don't know. I got priced off of that thing. I think I even saw a little bit of buyback. I think this went to 7.5, and now it's back down to 7 here. I looked at the over. And I used to get burned on Wake Forest overs. I loved their pace of play, but their efficiency was bad. Their efficiency was terrible last year. And I look at both this team's efficiency this year, and they rank in the 60s. 14.7 yards per point is pretty much what both of these teams average. And BC had an easy schedule. They might not even score, And also BC runs the ball 2-1. They have 200 running plays to 100 passing plays. Never that good for totals when it comes to running. So I did get priced out of this game just like you, man. But God, don't you hate it when you circle a game that you think you're going to bet, and then the market realizes it just like you do? It's like
I really do. It's really frustrating when you have this one circled and you watch it, especially totals. You see the line open. And you say, man, I thought that one was going to be, 64, 63, and I was going to hit that thing. And, then they open, 3 or 4 points higher than what you had. And then you sit there and try to decide, do I fire at this point or is this too high? So
exactly, my man. Well, no need to talk more about that unless this sucker completely changes. Hawaii versus Nevada is an intriguing game to me. I don't know why. It's just like, I guess I like watching Hawaii, sloppy football, interceptions, yet fast pace of play, but no defenses. But I think this kind of turned me on to the over here, and I did put a smaller play on the over 64. Both these defenses are downright terrible, okay? They're bad, and they haven't really played anybody yet. Oregon State and Arizona, whoop-de-doo. Hawaii played. Nevada beat Purdue because of a bunch of turnovers. They lost their quarterback that game too, Christian Solano, and they got there. Then they had to play Oregon, and they got beat like 77-6 or something ridiculous. It was in the 70s. But Carson Strong, he did play UTEP last week, and they're not that good, but they scored over 30 points, and he showed some improvement there. And Nevada's at home. I think they get some points this game. Nevada's weak against the pass. That's where Hawaii excels, and Hawaii certainly can throw some pick sixes, as we've seen before. As a matter of fact, when they beat Arizona, they had like 6 turnovers, and it was like one of those games that you would be shocked looking at the box score that they actually won. But I took a small play on the over. Hawaii averages 80 plays per game, and they're going to set the pace here. I think Hawaii sets the pace. So, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I like this game, actually. Hawaii's a turnover machine. You touched on that. Minus 12 turnover margin in 4 games. That's hard to do. 4 turnovers against Central Arkansas. I think they're certainly very fortunate to be 3-1 with the turnover problems that they've had. And it kind of reminds me of a point where a few seasons ago, I was playing some overs with a team, and they had a quarterback that was, making quite a few bad decisions. And I had a client ask me, why do you keep playing overs with this team? That guy throws a lot of picks. Well, I mean, a lot of them are pick sixes, or they're in their own end. I mean, you see Jameis Winston. I mean, he can be really good for an over for 2 reasons. We don't know if, and obviously it can hurt. They can turn it over in the red zone or something like that too. But some of these really bad decisions that Hawaii's been making, there could be a pick 6 or 2 in this game, and it wouldn't be surprising for that Nevada defense. Now, I will say, when I look at this game, I thought it was pretty interesting. And obviously this is kind of skewed because Nevada, just was absolutely blasted by Oregon. Like you said, Nevada's 106th in the nation in yards per play margin. I had Nevada in that first game against Purdue. The cover was probably the right side, but they were fortunate to win that game outright. That was a game that they probably shouldn't have won. Then they were drubbed by Oregon. And then, you look at their game against UTEP. They were up by 3 after 3 quarters there. My concern with Nevada is just what you said. They're 102nd in opponent QBR allowed. Hawaii's going to throw it a lot. 61.3% of their plays so far this year are pass. I don't really trust Hawaii on the mainland. They don't play very well on the road usually. But I don't want to back Nevada. And in my notes here, I put the over as my favorite play in this game. So I think big plays both ways. Hawaii gives up a ton of explosive plays. Even though Nevada's offense hasn't been too great this year, I imagine they'll look better in this one. So I do like the over as well.
Well, fantastic, man. Good that you're on this side. So perfect. When a totals guy tells you that, you definitely got to feel good. I see that thing creeping up too. I think I wouldn't doubt to see 66, 67 by Friday, Saturday. So if you like the over as well, I would recommend you getting it. Well, let's get into another big game here. Virginia versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame is laying 11.5 points. Over under is 49.5. Wow, was Notre Dame in a huge game last week where they almost won. Virginia certainly in the look-ahead spot. That's only having to come back against Old Dominion. Holy cow! We pointed that spot out, but I was too chicken to bet it, and I know Kyle did, but I saw it go past 28, and I was like, I missed it. But anyways, Kyle, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think this is a really fascinating handicap because Virginia is a team I like. I like Virginia a lot. I think Perkins a really good quarterback for them, great weapon. Virginia kind of a little bit under the radar compared to some teams. The ACC is not very good, and certainly they're going to have more wins than what they should if they played in a better conference. But I think this is a Virginia team that's really well coached. I like Mendenhall quite a bit. This is a tough spot for Notre Dame. What's Notre Dame do after they had a great opportunity last week, couldn't capitalize? I thought Notre Dame played pretty well in that game, especially the defense. I was really impressed with the defense, holding their own for a long time against a really big Georgia offensive line. At the same time, Notre Dame, you sit there and you say, should we be impressed that they, were close enough? Or should we say that, if Notre Dame's really going to be a top team, they need to win a game like that, because they were given opportunities. You think about the shanked punt there at the end of the game. They really had an opportunity there. So, if you're Notre Dame, I think it's hard for you to bounce back right away and be extremely fired up for this game. Obviously, they know Virginia is a good team, but they know they've really just missed their opportunity. Notre Dame is probably not going to get in the playoffs now. It'd be hard to imagine them getting into it. To me, this is a better spot for Virginia than it is Notre Dame. Raw power ratings, I don't think this is a great number to play Virginia at. Spot wise, I would definitely lean Virginia here. The other thing I would lean here is the under. Virginia likes to play very slowly, control the ball, time of possession advantage, things like that. I think they'll do that in this game, try to keep Notre Dame off the field. Both defenses very good at avoiding giving up big plays. And to me, when I play an under, I don't want to see a defense that could be giving up a lot of big plays. Those explosive plays are really dangerous. So, I'm leaning to the under. I see this one kind of moving down here just in the last few minutes. So 49.5, 49, even some 48.5 showing up. 49 is a pretty key number in betting totals. So I wouldn't want to play it under anything other than 49 or above. But I kind of like the under here. I also kind of like Virginia, and this is actually one that I'm considering playing myself. And I still have to look at this one some more. This might make my card.
Well, you're going to have to wait on this because it's going to go up if that's the case. Everyone saw Notre Dame give Georgia trouble. And to be honest with you, I upgraded Notre Dame in my power ratings by a point after that Georgia game. They went in that atmosphere in Athens, screaming people out there, and they did just what they did. If what I said earlier, if Ian Book turned the other way and saw that guy on the right shooting towards the end zone, didn't have to throw while falling back, they might have won that game because Kirby Smart kicked that field goal at 10 points where I thought he should have went for it. And completely, just like he did against Alabama, tried to blow that game. But Notre Dame, you can't bet them after this. I don't feel sorry for Notre Dame because they do this to themselves. They've had many opportunities to join the Big Ten, the ACC, join other conferences, but they make more money as an independent. Well, when you lose a game as an independent, you don't have a conference championship game. And everyone says, well, we already seen that before. And that's Notre Dame's choice here. And they scheduled at Georgia, very tough spot for them. I wouldn't say they're completely out of it. There's some chaos that can happen, I guess, but it would take very possible. At Pac-12, I mean, they're pretty much out of it.
They're out of it. Yeah. I feel safe on that one.
Yeah, exactly. But the Big 12 havoc can happen in the Big 12. Havoc can happen in the Big 10. Notre Dame's a very got some powerful allies. They have a shot if they blow some teams out, but this is a terrible spot to back them. I absolutely lean Virginia. My number's 10, but I lean Virginia, and I think that people are going to look at this what they did against Georgia, and by game time or an hour before, you might be able to get a 13 and a half or something like that. So I'll be waiting on this one with you, Kyle. Next game, we have an interesting one. Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is laying -5. Over-under is at 60. I'll start this one here. My number. Well, here, this is interesting. My number is Oklahoma State -6.5 on this one. Do you know what Kansas State feels like right here, Kyle? Kansas State feels like a public dog to me.
Yeah.
At this position. It completely feels like a public dog. Sure, they beat Mississippi State, but they were outgained by 83 yards. That was kind of their revenge game. They lost to Mississippi State at home. The players remember it. But the other two teams were tomato cans, I mean, literally, they were tomato cans, and Sagarin has their schedule ranked 144th out of all these teams. At least Oklahoma State went to Oregon State. At least they went to Texas and gave it a game. Gundy is in a position where he can definitely fight back. I like Oklahoma State here, but I'm even going to wait longer, just like that Notre Dame game. I think I might be able to sneak a 4, maybe better, when the public jumps all over Kansas State this week. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm looking at the odds board, I see a couple fours already popping up. So I definitely, it looks to me like Kansas State's catching some money here. My thought on this game is I think it's a difficult game. If I'm going to bet a side here, I'm definitely betting Oklahoma State, not Kansas State. I think that Kansas State, though, is in a good position, and they had a lot of time to get ready for this game. So you got Oklahoma State off a loss in a big game. You could say that this is a difficult spot for Oklahoma State, and I really wouldn't disagree. At the same time, this number is more than priced that in. So if you think about Kansas State, certainly Kleinman's a good coach, and I think he'll do a good job with that team. But Kansas State, like you said, what have they really proven so far? I guess my question is Mississippi State really that good? I don't think we know the answer to that question yet. I mean, they certainly deserve credit for going to an SEC school and winning on the road, but Mississippi State's not as good as last year. Their defense is way down from what it was last year. There's been some value taking overs with them because of their defense being way down. I think that this is an interesting game in that, like I said, I don't want to bet Oklahoma State here. Now, if this one keeps dropping, I might end up doing it. I do like Oklahoma State, have the season win total over for them. A little bit nervous about that one after they lost to Texas. I was hoping they could pull off a win there, but I like Gleason as their new offensive coordinator. Spencer Sanders, a really good fit at quarterback. To me, this is a game that I'd rather not bet, but the number is getting pretty low.
Yeah, and you look at the plays per the yards per play. Kansas State's looks pretty good at 6.5, but they had that tomato can schedule and they still gave up 4.9. Yet Oklahoma State, they're at 6.9 yards per play with a harder schedule, and they gave up 5.24. So they actually have a better difference when it comes to net yards per play right there. That tells me everything I need to know personally. I'm just going to wait on this a little bit longer, but you're right. I mean, nothing too serious on this one because, to be honest with you, I didn't watch a lot of these teams. I haven't really concentrated on. It's just kind of something I've been following. I do know Oklahoma State plays fast. I do know that they kind of have a formula that might jump Kansas State, and that's kind of what I'd be looking for. And it's a revenge spot for them since they lost to Schneider when he was running the team last year. So be looking for that one. FAU versus Charlotte is our next game, Kyle, and I thought this one might be right up your alley. The lower conference ones with the value. It's at Pick'em now. The over-under is at 65. I was kind of high on Charlotte, but I don't know a lot here about FAU. I have Charlotte minus 1.5 here. So I have these power rated pretty close. They just got done with a tough Clemson team, and I kind of wonder if they really didn't care too much about that game. I know that FAU, I whenever I back them, for some reason Lane Kiffin gets me. I don't know why that is, man, but yeah, I just can't predict him. And they just played a MAC team and an FCS team. I'm not Ball State. That win doesn't tell me a lot. I don't think there's enough knowledge here for FAU for me. So it's a stay away from me for now. I like how Charlotte played Appalachian State. They really stuck it in that game, and I'm really high on App State this year. So I'm asking you about this game, Kyle. Do you have any thoughts?
Okay, so here's one of the games where I had this one circled. I was going to play the over, and then the line came out higher than I expected. So I will say that I still think I like the over in this game at least somewhat. And without saying exactly what I lined this total at, I will say, this is one where it kind of feels like it should be a high-scoring game to where I kind of think it'll be even higher than what number I came up with. Just that Charlotte is 21st in yards per play so far this year. A really good first-year coaching staff. I like Charlotte's coaching staff quite a bit. They played App State. They played Clemson. So their offensive numbers really aren't a fraud. This is a team that has played some tough games, and they're 21st in the nation in yards per play so far this year. FAU looked really bad offensively against top defenses early in the year, but they're going to score a lot of points against the weaker opponents they play. Last week they played that game against Wagner in a rainstorm and heavy wind, things like that. So even the fact that they didn't score more points in that game, somewhat due to the fact that was a weather game. So to me, I think FAU, Their defense is bad enough that Charlotte should have a lot of big plays here. 25 plays of 20 yards or more so far this year allowed by FAU. 25 plays of 20 yards or more at this point in the season is a lot, definitely. The one thing that has me kind of wondering whether I should take this one is the tempo. Charlotte does not play fast enough to play high overs with. 127th out of 130 in tempo. Now, FAU is 13th. So you got one really fast team and one really slow team, but two offenses that are better than the defenses they're going against. So I like the over some in this one. I wouldn't even have any lean on the side. I have Charlotte -1. So I don't have any opinion on the side. I still like the over, kind of hoping this one comes back down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you power rate the game for a side?
Yeah, I got -1 here on Charlotte. So
you're right by me. Yeah,
you're right by me. And the situation, like you said, is not great for Charlotte, but you could argue that maybe they knew they were going to get beat down by Clemson. So this is the game they look forward to. So it's kind of hard for me to weigh what the motivational factors in this game would be. I think this is a hard side to pick.
Yeah, I do. I do as well. It's probably going to stay away from this one, but maybe I can. I'll try to pay attention to the box score so I can maybe learn a little bit more about it. I highly doubt I'll be watching this one, but I can guarantee that you will be watching this game, Kyle, because you know that we weren't getting out of here without talking about Ohio State versus Nebraska, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Nebraska, it started at 15.5 on Sunday when it came out, and this thing is up to 17.5. The over-under is 67.5. We all know Kyle likes his Buckeyes. What are your thoughts on this one, bud?
Yeah, Ohio State looks really, really good so far this year. Ryan Day has done a really good job with them. The thing that I'm most impressed with so far this year, though, everybody's talking about Fields and the offense. The defense has been a lot better. And that's what the big problem with Ohio State was last year. I know that they won every game but one. I've said this probably 2 or 3 times on your pod already, but I was at the one game that they lost. So I remember that game pretty well.
Of course.
It's one of those things that obviously I've been at a lot of Ohio State wins over the years, but that one sticks in your mind when you lose the way they did in that one. Ohio State last year was one of those teams that their profile, they weren't as good of a team as their record, and so far this year they look like they're a better team than last year. But the question to me is, are we going to keep seeing that really good defense? They're second in the nation in yards per play allowed so far this year. Now they're facing definitely the best offense they've played so far this year. I think that's what I want to know the most about this game. If I had to bet this game, I think I would probably take the over. I know some other people I respect here like the over in this one. There's going to be a lot of tempo here. Nobody's going to slow this game down. A lot of big plays. Certainly Ohio State should get a lot of big plays. I would think Nebraska could make some big plays here. The thing is, 67.5 is a high number. Everything has to go right when you start getting close to 70. Ohio State hasn't played a tough schedule so far this year. Nebraska had a misleading game there last week where they really kind of dominated Illinois and needed to come back and win because they had turnover issues, and they outgained them by 300 yards or something like that. So right. Nebraska is a little bit better than some people think they are right now, but I think Ohio State's pretty good too. So I don't want to fade Ohio State. As a Buckeyes fan here, I want to have a strong lean on this game and tell you something, but I really don't. I'm not going to bet this game. I can tell you that for sure. I will not bet this game. I will definitely watch this game.
I said that on Sunday, but I was wrong. I had to drum up the courage to bet this game, and then eventually I did. Then eventually I liked it a little bit more. When you have power ratings, sometimes you just have to go by them. Otherwise, you're going to have to just change some sort of philosophy here. There's a discrepancy here in my power ratings between the spread, and I have Ohio State, the 4th highest team in all of college football, behind Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama. And then I have Nebraska, and I was lower than the market on Nebraska coming in the season. But I think the market itself really got down on Nebraska, especially after losing to Colorado. And what they did against Illinois is, even though we know there's a 390-yard discrepancy in that game right there, but they were looking ahead. It's funny. I do a look ahead spots every week, and that was one of them. Nebraska looking past Illinois to Ohio State, and they were sloppy and won the game at the end. But that was a spot I should have bet. And a lot of times it has to do more with spots than how good teams are. But Nebraska circled this game. I have it at 14.25 on a neutral field, but a night game in Lincoln, this is more closer to 10 to me from a power rating standpoint. We know that Taylor Martinez was recruited by Ohio State, and he chose Nebraska. He chose Nebraska, and I think he's had this game circled. You know how good he did coming back last year with the first-year team. I think there's some value on Nebraska now that they're kind of really in their conference. Maybe kind of towards what your point was, not covering spreads in the non-conference, and all of a sudden they're covering spreads in the conference, So I'm taking what you said there and kind of applying it to this game. Justin Fields is a real deal. He is, absolutely. And Chase Young is the best edge rusher in the business right now with 7 sacks already, right? But how is we don't know how the quarterback at a freshman, Justin Fields, is going to perform in this big spot. It's different. It's not going to Indiana when there's 40% Buckeye fans or more, It's not like that. This is a lot longer of a travel and a lot bigger of a stadium filled with bigger people, man. And I wouldn't be a sports bettor if I didn't have to put something on it. It's not a big play, and it's very true. Ohio State could possibly blow them out, but I think a guy like Taylor Martinez is going to keep them in this game. Ohio State's wins at the end. The over is a definite strong lean for me, but I'm telling you, Kyle, I like Nebraska here for a small play. Any last
let me throw in one more thing here at the end. I will say, I think if I was forced to bet a side here, I would take Nebraska too. My number is 14.5 in this game. So I could see why it went up just a little from the 14, but now you're up to 17.5. That's a pretty big number for a night game in Lincoln. Like you said, this is a really big spot. The other thing I don't like about Ohio State here is, like 80% of the bets are on Ohio State, 82% of the money. I don't really like seeing a team playing their first tough road game and everybody's on them. I don't like being on that side. So, yeah, I agree with you. This is a big number for Ohio State. Could they win by 28, 35 points? Of course they could. I think it's a stretch to be laying 17.5 points, though. This is a Nebraska team that still has quite a bit of talent. And, as far as Adrian Martinez, I think the jury is out on him, and I think this is a real big game for him. Martinez was really talked up by Scott Frost in the preseason. This is a game for him to show, whether he really has it or not. Ohio State's defense is at least pretty good. So I'm going to find out a lot about Adrian Martinez in this game.
All right, then. I called him Taylor Martinez for some reason. Why the heck did I do that? Who is Taylor Martinez? He's somebody that...
Yeah, they used to have Taylor Martinez.
Okay, that's why I called him that. Okay. Well, thanks for correcting me, man. Well, hey, Kyle, this is going to be a great game. Isn't game day going to be there, too? I think that I wonder if that plays a part too to this Nebraska team. It's like, holy cow, huge spread for a game day, but there really isn't any other games worth going to. Right. It's not like you can do Notre Dame twice in a row. There is no big top 10 matchups here. So that's the interesting part about this week. But hey, we found some plays and I'm really happy about that. Are there any games that you'd like to throw out there?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think this one's going to be the one that I'm going to consider my free play too. So I kind of answer a couple questions here and talking about a game. And this is also going to be my free play here for podcast listeners. I'm going to take Washington State here against Utah. I like Utah. I like Kyle Whittingham. I like him a lot. Utah's hype train was so big before the season this year. I mean, they were hyped up so much. I heard people in the media who a lot of people respect saying, hey, Utah's a top talent team. They have as much talent as anybody in the country. We know Utah doesn't have as much talent as some teams in the country. And if we start saying Utah, is a outside, playoff team that maybe they could be an outside chance, then that's fair. But if you start saying Utah is one of the 3 or 4 most talented teams in the country, then you're overrating them quite a bit. So now you've got Washington State off that really, really rough loss. I mean, what a way to lose a game. I watched the fourth quarter of that game, and I had kind of followed that game a little bit, Washington State and UCLA. And, I had turned it off thinking there was no need to watch that game. What was there to watch? And, then everything, havoc happens, and Washington State loses 4 fumbles, and it kind of just trips all over themselves, and UCLA takes advantage of it and wins the game. I think that Mike Leach, will still have his team ready to play a game like this. And I worry about Utah because Utah had playoff aspirations. They're not going to get to the playoffs now. So, now they're without Zach Moss. Zach Moss, a very, very good player. He means so much to this offense. And I see Huntley is questionable as well at quarterback. So, actually, I'm fine with playing this even if Huntley does play. Moss is a really big loss for them. I wish this line was a little bit bigger, but this one actually fits the road conference teams that haven't really covered the spread so far this year. The one that we talked about at the beginning, the system, the angle, Washington State fits this. So I'm going to use Washington State plus the points as my free play here because I think that this one makes sense to me. You've got a Utah team that's disappointed after they lost the previous game. You've got a Washington State team that can throw it around. And if Utah has one defensive weakness, it is the secondary. Their defensive line, very good. They're going to give up some yards in the secondary. I think Washington State keeps this game very close, even has a chance to win it outright.
The more you talk about it, the more I like it, man. You're right. Tyler Huntley, he's banged up. Zach Moss, did you say he's out? I'm seeing questionable. Is he out? Wow. I didn't.
His Sports Insight says out, so that's what I'm going by.
All right. Well, there you go, man. Holy cow. Yeah, I've been staring at this game. I'm like, well, the total is kind of low. What's going on? Are they going to control the ball? Are they going to run the ball? Are they going to take Washington State out of it? One thing I'm going to look at before I make a bet on this is the weather. I remember just too much about how Washington beat Washington State in a rainy, wet, windy game just because all they did was have to pound the ball. So I lean Washington State for sure right now. Absolutely. I like what you're saying there. They should have never blew that UCLA game. And I was guilty of having a couple beers and having a great day of college football and putting a little bit on Washington State and seeing the halftime score. I was thinking that thing was a coast. Then I quit watching, then followed it and kept refreshing my phone as I'm going to bed. I'm like, what the hell is going on over here? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm 12-7, not 12-6, whatever. So it was one of those nights. But either way, I bet you Utah was probably hoping Washington State would win because now, they're coming into here with a vengeance. If there's any team in the Pac-12 that can come back in a game down 10 points, 12 points, whatever, it's Washington State. They're never out of a game, right? So that's not a bad bet to take them as a dog. I really like what you're doing there. So fantastic, Kyle. Where can our listeners go to benefit from your knowledge and your plays?
Well, like I said, so far, 20-11 so far this year in college football premium plays. I'm going to offer a special here for the podcast. If you mention Odds Breakers, send me a message on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. $450 for all college football plays the rest of the season. That'll go all the way through the title game. You won't have to pay anything more for bowl games like some people would do. Just every play the rest of the season, $450. If you don't want to pay for plays, that's okay too. Just go over to huntersportsfix.com and check out the newsletter section. I've got a free picks newsletter, 81 and 49 in my last 130 free plays there. I can't keep going at that rate, and I've been trying to tell people that, at some point here, I'm going to hit some slump on the free plays, and everybody's going to say, what the hell's wrong? What are you doing? How it is. But these free plays are nice for me because I'm able to use things like team totals, first half plays, some things that I normally wouldn't use based on, some of the sites that I'm on, not having that as an option. So if you want to check out free plays, that's a good place to go. And also lots of guaranteed premium packages there at huntersportspicks.com. If you don't want just college football, you're looking for something else, lots of packages available there.
Fantastic, guys. Make sure you do that. Check out Kyle Hunter's picks. He is on a tear right now. Kyle, I thought this episode was full of great knowledge. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I always learn something when you come on. Have a fantastic rest of your week and your weekend betting.
Hey, I had a good time. Always appreciate the chance to come on here, and best of luck in all your bets, and best of luck to all the listeners as well.
And now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.lv for a 100% sign-up bonus. Please visit uwager.lv. Use the promo code OddsBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. All right, well, let's start out with college football sharp money. And right off the bat, we have UCF hosting UConn. Sharp money is on UCF at minus 43, a 26% difference, but some dual action as well. I think it's like 64% of the tickets and 90% of the money or something. Temple hosting Georgia Tech at minus 9, a 20% difference on Temple. Sharp money on Iowa State at Baylor from minus 2 to minus 3, a 28% difference. This kind of worries me for my Baylor future right there. Toledo hosting BYU from plus 4.5 down to plus 2.5, a 20% difference. I think the value's gone. Akron at UMass, minus 4.5 to minus 7.5, a 26% difference. Maybe UMass has already quit this season this early. Sharp money on Michigan hosting Rutgers at minus 27.5, a 20% difference. Sharp money on Minnesota at Purdue from plus 1 to minus 1, a whopping 58% difference. Sharp money on Louisiana versus Georgia Southern at minus 5. Some dual action there, actually. 98% of the money on Louisiana. Kentucky at South Carolina at plus 3, a 34% difference. I disagree with that. I kind of like South Carolina. They don't have a lot of chances to win games. This is one of them. Sharp money on Kansas at TCU at plus 16, a 24% difference. Low total here. So that's probably the play. Dual action on Oklahoma hosting Texas Tech, minus 24 to minus 27. 89% of the money is on Oklahoma. Sharp money on Charlotte hosting FAU at plus 1, a 26% difference. Slight home dog. Sharp money on Virginia at Notre Dame at plus 12.5, a 22% difference. Sharp money on Coastal Carolina at Appalachian State at plus 16, a 38% difference. Letdown spot for App State. Cincinnati, sharp money on them at Marshall from minus 3 to minus 3.5, a 25% difference. I disagree with that, and if you look at Cincinnati's schedule, you'll see why. Sharp money on Louisiana Monroe hosting South Alabama at minus 16, a 35% difference. Sharp money on Southern Miss hosting UTEP from minus 25 to minus 26.5, a 36% difference. Sharp money on Rice hosting Louisiana Tech from plus 11 past the 10 to plus 9, a 21% difference. Sharp college totals. San Jose State at Air Force under 56.5, a 47% difference. It's an option team. Northwestern versus Wisconsin, dual action on the over, 44 to 46.5, 99% of the money on the over. They probably just expect Wisconsin to score at least that. Sharp money on Buffalo versus Miami of Ohio under 57 all the way down to 47, a 35% difference there. Maybe some rain's involved. Sharp money on NC State versus Florida State over 61, a whopping 52% difference there. Sharp money on Hawaii versus Nevada over 65, a 41% difference. Sharp money on Stanford versus Oregon State under 58, a 32% difference. Clemson versus North Carolina under 60, a 56% difference. Sharp money on Kansas State versus Oklahoma State under 63.5 down to 60, and it's a 30% difference. Sharp money on Coastal Carolina versus Appalachian State under 60, a whopping 71% difference there. Coastal Carolina's got a good defense. Sharp money on Colorado State versus Utah State over 72, a 40% difference. Sharp NFL sides on Oakland at Indianapolis at plus 7, a 52% difference. I disagree with that one there. I think Indy has a shot to, wipe the table with Oakland. Sharp money on Arizona hosting Seattle at plus 5, a 30% difference. Those are the only ones that are really, really sharp. Sharp NFL totals, Carolina versus Houston over 47, a 26% difference. Oakland versus Indianapolis, over 45, a 36% difference. Sharp money on New England versus Buffalo, under from 44 down to 42.5, a 25% difference. And sharp money on Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, over 43.5, a 41% difference. My friends, if you'd like to contribute to the show, please tweet us at the Odds Breakers or send us a direct message or go to theoddsbreakers.com. We'd love to hear from you if you are a handicapper. If you'd like us to break a game down for you, please tweet at us. And obviously it has to be the following week, but we'd love to put your game on the show. Have a fantastic weekend sports betting and go get some winners.